Welcome to my studio. I'm going to show you around. This is my wall where I pin up all little bits of pieces of inspiration. You can see some maps of the universe. On this table, you'll see thousands of pieces of paper that have been painted, cut, and bound together. The installation that I created for Art on Paper in New York this year is titled "Every Fragment You Collect Brings You Closer to a Whole." The idea behind this piece being the notion that as we incarnate, we shatter fragments or aspects of ourselves into other people as well as into places on the earth. And then, of course, we spend the rest of our lives trying to gather these fragments back through interactions with certain people that we either like or dislike. And of course, it's also the reason why we are drawn to certain places and have this desire to travel to particular locations in order to gather these fragments of ourselves back. And the whole idea being in order to feel complete again. For the installation, I worked predominantly with paper, although I do make these installations using fabric as well. I begin with large sheets of paper, which I hand dye, and then I cut them into strips. I often spray them. Many of my works are inspired by nature, and particularly in this artwork I was looking at the growth formation of mushrooms, specifically the turkey tail mushroom. So looking at images of crystal formations under a microscope. So those together formed the inspiration behind the visual aspect of this. I grew up in Johannesburg in South Africa. I've been making works for about 20 years. Early works were probably the works that I did around the Helderberg plane crash. My father was a passenger and he died when I was 14 years old. This body of work was really about the fragility of life. The incident happened during the apartheid South Africa. The first 8 years of my career were very focused on that specific incident. I've always been interested in those existential questions about what happens to us when we die, what is the purpose of our life. I think a lot of my work is very much around the temporality of our existence. My work comes from a personal issue that I'm dealing with at that time. It's always very cathartic. Actually, it is inspired by science and technology. I often look at images of data that's captured from satellites, telescopes, visualization maps. The Science Museum is generally the first place I'll go to when I'm traveling. I love this idea that the macrocosm and the microcosm are replicated visually within each other. I'm inspired at looking through slides of cross-sections through stems, but equally in the same way looking at images of the universe and stars and nebulas, but also the data that's captured through instruments that are not visible through our own eyes, such as telescopes. My studio is my sanctuary, a quiet, sacred space to work with hundreds or thousands of units. So whether I'm creating a collage that's created with thousands of tiny pieces of paper, or if I'm creating a woven work, it always tends to be a repetitive action where you can kind of lose yourself in it, where it becomes more of a meditation. Then the process begins of creating, and when I create, I listen to a lot of music and specific playlists that are personal to me, and that helps me get into the flow of creating the works from an emotional place.